Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to a brand new show, The Scholars. Looking at the life of those scholars who have inspired us till today. Whether it's the likes of Sheikh al Sheikh al Tussi, or scholars like Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, who have inspired not only many of the Shia followers, but have also influenced the Shia thinking. The pioneers, the scholars. With me, I am delighted to be joined by Ayatollah Sayyid Dr. Fadl Al-Milani. I welcome him on your behalf. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidina.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Sayyidina, for joining us for this brand new show where we will look at a few scholars, inshallah, in the next few weeks and try and not only get inspired by these scholars, but also try and take some lessons. Today, inshallah, we will look at the great Sheikh al Tussi. His full name was Sheikh Abu Ja'far Muhammad ibn Hassan al Tussi, known as Sheikh al-Ta'ifa. Before we look deeper into his life, this title, Sheikh al-Ta'ifa, why was he known as Sheikh al-Ta'ifa?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. There were some scholars before him, like Sheikh al-Mufid, Sheikh al-Saduq, and Sayyid al-Murtada, Alam al-Huda, whose teachers. But because of his achievements and the good work, so in the community, in the Shia community, was given this title, Sheikh al-Ta'ifa, the master of the sect or the group of followers of Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. Of course, Sheikh al-Mufid and Sayyid al-Murtada and others did a very good job. But because of the variety of his works, and at the same time he had some opportunity to establish the Hawza of Najaf and to invite all scholars to come there and to be in the neighborhood of the shrine of Imam Ali alayhi salam. All these gave him some sort of respect and dignity.
Thank you, Sayyidina. Of course, Sheikh al Tussi, from his name we can tell that he was born in the city of Tus in Khurasan in the year 385 after Hijrah, in the holy month of Ramadan, as narrations tell us. He moved to Baghdad at an early age, the age of 23, and inshallah we will try and understand the time he lived in, Sayyidina. We believe that he lived in a time where the Buwaid dynasty was in power. Can you tell us a bit more about this time?
Yeah, indeed there were two dynasties at the time of Sheikh al Tussi. Before that, it was towards the last caliphs of the Abbasid caliphs, Al-Qadir Billah. And but the two strong dynasties, one followers of Ahlulbayt alayhim salam, these are the Boyats or Boyhiyin. In Iran they call them Al-Buye, in Iraq they call them Al-Boyhiyun, but in English normally we call them Boyats. Yeah? Avadu Dawla, Fakhru Dawla, and some others who were very, very loyal to the madhab of Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. Indeed, they offered very good services to the community. On the contrary, in Baghdad, there were the staunch Sunnis, the Seljuqs. And Seljuqs originally were from Turkey. Even nowadays, there is a city in Turkey, it's called Seljuk. So they had this sort of negative understanding about Ahlulbayt and the ulama of the Shia. So that struggle, that of course sectarian rift, as we see it nowadays, I mean, caused a lot of problems, bloodshed and destruction of buildings, houses, markets, and this was the reason that Sheikh al Tussi left Baghdad to go to Najaf. And that was good to establish the Hawza of Najaf, the seminary of Najaf, which is approximately 1,000 years old now.
Of course. Thank you, Sayyidina. In his time in Baghdad, we know that he was studying under Sheikh al-Mufid and also Sayyid al-Murtada, Alam al-Huda.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about these two great scholars who were the teachers of Sheikh al Tussi?
Of course, Sheikh al-Mufid had the opportunity to live in part of the minor occultation. And in few occasions, Sheikh al-Mufid received tawqi'at, and tawqi' literally means signature, but here means correspondence. Correspondence from the 12th Imam on the hand of some of the 4 deputies, either the 3rd or the 4th. And this Sheikh al-Mufid was offering the best of services, teaching, and his seminary. So Sheikh al Tussi, when moved from Tus to Baghdad, that time Baghdad was a good center of knowledge, whether for Shias or for all Muslims, all right? So in this occasion, he studied under Sheikh al-Mufid until Sheikh al-Mufid died in year 413 after Hijrah. So later on, he joined Sayyid al-Murtada, Alam al-Huda. As we know, there were 2 brothers, Sayyid al-Radi, the compiler of Nahj al-Balagha, and Sharif al-Murtada, or Sayyid al-Murtada, Alam al-Huda, who died in the year 436 after Hijrah. The difference between Sharif al-Murtada, the compiler of Nahj al-Balagha, and his brother Sayyid al-Murtada was that Sharif al-Radi died whilst was in his mid-40s, whilst Sharif al-Murtada lived longer until his 80s, all right? Anyway, when he died in the year 436, now it became known to everybody that his own knowledge, benefiting from these 2 great scholars and teachers, made him of certain degree of level of teaching and depth of knowledge, and gradually he started to teach. And it is reported that in the madrasa which he used to teach, Al-Qadir Billah, the Abbasid Caliph, used to attend the teaching. And later on, he was honored by giving the chair of honorable or honorary chair to recognize the status of the teacher. And he, of course, became the inheritor of all his teachers, including the Sheikh al-Mufid and Sayyid al-Murtada. Of course, after 436, we see that he teaching for a while there. Then after the fitna or the sectarian rift in Baghdad, they burned his library, the followers of Seljuk, or those who were supported by the Seljuks, and he moved to his library and his chair. So he moved to Najaf to become next to the shrine of Imam Ali alayhi salam.
Of course, it's incredible when we read the life of Sheikh al Tussi is that we are told that he taught not only through the fiqh of the Shias, but he also taught other sects. Why is this important at a time where there was some feuds, but still we hear that Sheikh al Tussi not only was giving the view of the Ja'faris, but also the Hanbalis, the Shafi'is, the Malikis. Why is this important for someone like Sheikh al Tussi?
We have to appreciate the broad-mindedness of the Shia ulama. They do not stick to fiqh al-Ja'fari only. They are open-minded, and they do the comparative studies, either in hadith or fiqh or tafsir. And that's why we'll see that he has written many books in hadith, in tafsir, in fiqh, jurisprudence. But one of the books written by Sheikh al Tussi in fiqh and jurisprudence is Al-Khilaf. The book Al-Khilaf, in the book Al-Khilaf, he mentions not only the opinion of the Ja'fari school about each single issue, rather he says that the Malikis, the Hanafis, the Hanbalis, the Shafi'is say so, and gathering the knowledge and the opinions of all other schools there. So this indicates how broad-minded and fair are the Shia scholars. And for example, again, I remember once I visited Barhum Allamat al-Murtada al-Askari in his house in Baghdad. And I noticed in his library 3 different editions of Musnad Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And I said, Sayyid, what's this? I mean, 1 edition is sufficient. And he said, no. Sometimes there are differences in editions with a word or with hadith, or even the version is different. So I want to have as much access to the whole versions and variety of editions that when I quote it, no one tells me that, oh, it doesn't match the copy which I have. So to be fair, to be broad-minded, to be able to digest and know about all other schools. This is comparative study, and it is very, very good of our ulama to do that, including Sheikh al Tussi.
Thank you very much, Sayyidina. We are actually going to see a short video about Sheikh al Tussi. It's a visit to where he is buried, which was his home, where his library was, and which is till today used, and inshallah we'll see this in this video, which is till today used as a place where students come to gain their Islamic Hausa studies. We will see you after this short video.
Hassan al Tussi, known as Sheikh al-Ta'ifa, scholar of the sect, was a prominent scholar of the Shia Islamic belief. He was born in the holy month of Ramadan in the year 385 after Hijrah in the city of Tus in Iran. Sheikh al Tussi grew up in Tus and began his studies there. He has been held in very high esteem among the Shia scholars. His greatness can be seen from the very fact that he was the author of 2 of the 4 most important books of the Shia faith, and more importantly, as the person who established the Islamic seminary Hausa in the holy city of Najaf. At the age of 23 in the year 408 after Hijrah, Sheikh al Tussi moved to Baghdad and remained in Iraq up until his death. Since Baghdad was the capital of the Abbasids ever since the times of Mansur al-Dawaniqi, since the time of the 6th Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, peace be upon him, till the period when Sheikh al Tussi flourished there, Baghdad was the center of Islamic studies. Eminent scholars were the residents of the city. Thus, the Shia population continued to increase progressively in the capital city. When Sheikh al Tussi migrated to Baghdad, the name of Sheikh al-Mufid was very famous and the talk of the town. People used to join his school on knowing that he was the chief of the institution. Both Sunni and Shia seekers of knowledge would attend classes with him. Therefore, Sheikh al Tussi also joined lessons at the school of Sheikh al-Mufid at the age of 23. Sheikh al Tussi started taking lessons with Sheikh al-Mufid and later on with Sayyid al-Murtada. After the death of his mentor, Sayyid Murtada Alam al-Huda, Sheikh al Tussi succeeded him as the chairman of the theological center in Baghdad. Sheikh al Tussi remained in Baghdad for a period of 12 years after the demise of his teacher. A series of invasions soon afterwards caused destruction to his house and his shifting to Najaf, where he established the Najaf Theological Center. In the year 448 after Hijrah, the residence of Sheikh al Tussi was also attacked with the intention of killing him. He was not found at home. His residence, his contents, including his books, and his chair, the pulpit, were all burnt. After this most regrettable event, which caused the loss of Sheikh al Tussi's books, he had to leave Baghdad and he moved to the holy city of An-Najaf. Sheikh al Tussi's books on fiqh, entitled An-Nihaya, was formerly used as a textbook in the theological schools and seminaries. He wrote another book entitled Al-Mabsut, which brought Islamic fiqh to a new stage and was accounted the most comprehensive one at its age. There are more books written by Sheikh al Tussi. Other important titles are Al-Tadhib and Istibsar. Sheikh al Tussi's authority and impact was such that after his death for 80 years, no alim, scholar, gave any rulings, fatwas, which were different from Sheikh al Tussi's. No scholar in the Shia or Sunni world covered such wide fields of study as Sheikh al Tussi. He died in Najaf on the night of the 22nd of Muharram in the year 406 after Hijrah at the age of 75. He was buried in his home as per his advice, his will. His house was converted into a mosque, which later became a center for education in the Hawza. Till today, many scholars follow the footsteps of Sheikh al Tussi. Until today, in his house, where he is buried, many classes take place.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to this brand new show, The Scholars, inshallah showing for the next few weeks every Thursday evening. Sayyidina, we saw this video about Al-Jami' al-Tussi. It's only a few meters away from the shrine. Have you personally visited this mosque?
Oh, yes. First of all, we used to go there to pray behind the Imam or the Alim, Marhum Sayyid Muhammad Taqi Bahr al-Ulum, to pray behind him in that mosque. And one of the good memories of mine was that when I was 16, 17, I would invite on the weekly basis a group of youngsters at the secondary school in Najaf. Approximately 30-35 people would gather Thursday afternoon, and I would lecture them on aqaid. Yeah, and that's then compiled in my book Difa'un al-Aqidah, the first book which I published when I was 18. So it was a place of inspiration, and you could see that how 1,000 years ago a great alim came here. He took a piece of land as his house, his residence, and the school, and in his will he mentioned that after me this is to be turned into a mosque. And since then it was a center of education, in addition to be a center of the ibadat, yeah, the prayers, and great scholars like Mirza Naini, the teacher of Maraja, then Sayyid Muhsin al-Hakim, and many others would run their high level and most advanced level of lectures there in that mosque.
Back to the scholar we are looking at, Sheikh al Tussi, which we saw his mosque there in the holy city of Najaf, a few meters away from the holy shrine, the actual shrine. And in fact, there's the road that is named after him. Shari al-Tussi is named after Sheikh al Tussi, and his mosque is there. If you're coming from the graveyard, it's on your right-hand side. From the cemetery, it's on your right-hand side. And if visitors do visit, it's nice to go and visit this mosque, maybe pray 2 rak'ats, and of course, remember the Sheikh and read the Fatiha for him. He remained in, Sheikh al Tussi remained in Baghdad for 12 years.
Yes.
In the year 448 after Hijrah, he moved to the holy city of Najaf. And the question that is raised, why did he choose Najaf as a holy city for him to go and migrate to? Was it a center of education? Was there anything happening in Najaf? Did he take students with him?
There are reports to say that there were few people who would start their whatever education or teaching there in Najaf before the migration of Sheikh Tussi. But as a center, established one, it was at the time of Sheikh Tussi. Why? We know that the authentic hadith of the Holy Prophet ﷺ saying that I am the city of knowledge and Ali is the gate to it, which is recognized by this hadith, recognized by all scholars. And sometimes the full book is written on the asanid and the chain of narrators about this particular hadith. Anyway, so when the Prophet ﷺ mentions that Ali is in this position, and we believe that the spirit of our imams are present. Of course, their bodies are, buried there. But of course, the inspiration and the great reminder of such great scale of knowledge and teaching. So, of course, that is very, very important. Furthermore, we've been told, and I personally experienced that, when you go to the shrine of Imam Ali, even today when you go, with sincerity and not focusing on the, for example, decoration or the mirrors or whatever, miniature around the shrine. No, you only focus on the spirit of Imam Ali alayhi salam, all right? And you communicate with him during the homage and paying the ziyarah to the Imam alayhi salam, okay, in different ways of ziyarah, Aminullah or same other. That would definitely give you some sort of strength and opens your, not eyes, even the inner sight. And that was experienced by many. Of course, those who have hundreds of stories to tell us about how important was the studying in the house of Najaf, and great ulama who were graduated from that area, okay? So either because it was a safe area, or it was the name of Imam Ali alayhi salam, or the experience of, such great gate of the knowledge of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But of course, the moment he moved to Najaf, his students followed him, and the circle started there, and that was the beginning of this great hawza in Najaf.
Thank you very much, Sayyidina. The process of ijtihad is something that I believe is something that the Shias can be proud of, because it's something that is always continuous, with new things happening around the world. Ijtihad is always becoming at a higher level of stage. We can say that the foundations were laid by Sheikh al Tussi. Before we look at how he did this, what is ijtihad for those that do not know?
Ijtihad is the strive to deduce the Islamic law from its sources. And the known sources are, the first is the Holy Quran, second, the Hadith or the Sunnah, whether it is the Sunnah of the Ma'asum, the error-free, either Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the Imams alayhi salam. So the Quran, the Hadith, then the Ijma', which is consensus, and the intellectual reasoning. These are the four sources of the Islamic law. The strive, the struggle, the hard work to deduce the law from its sources is called ijtihad. And the person is called mujtahid. Unfortunately, maybe, it is right to say unfortunately, that during the 5th Hijri century, the Abbasid Caliph issued an order to close the gate of ijtihad, because they already have 4 great imams, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and Shafi'i, and their heritage, their works and their madhab and whatever they said, that is sufficient for us. We don't need someone to add anything. That's why they closed the gate of ijtihad. However, with the Shias, with the followers of Ahlulbayt alayhim salam, this gate remained open. And when we see that after Sheikh al-Saduq, of course, Sheikh Saduq relied heavily on the ahadith, but with Sheikh al-Mufid and Sayyid al-Murtada, but the full picture and structure, we see it with Sheikh al Tussi, that ijtihad as relying on usul al-fiqh. And this usul al-fiqh means principle of jurisprudence, yeah, can be seen greatly in his book Al-Udda, or Uddat al-Usul, when he wrote that. In jurisprudence, he wrote a concise book called Al-Nihaya fi Mujarrad al-Fiqh wal-Fatawa, Fortunately, it has been translated into English and
like a Risala book.
Yes, published by ICAS, and it is, in my opinion, it is the very first Risala, okay, written. So some people say that the Risala and Taqleed belongs only to 150 years ago. They are wrong. Sheikh Tussi started the Risala, which article by article, line by line, mentions every issue. Of course, later on, I mean, ever-increasing issues and the need for ijtihad, the different of, I mean, opinions. These are would happen and follow later. But the value of ijtihad so great that continued from the time of Sheikh Tussi and continued until now, and that is evident and clear in the works of Hawzat al-Najaf, Hawzat Karbala, Mashhad, and other Hawzat.
Thank you very much. Before we look at I was hoping to look at the Usuli and Akhbari and the difference, maybe just an introduction on this, the influence, and inshallah we will try and do this about every scholar that we speak about, the influence of such a scholar like Sheikh al Tussi. We know obviously of his two famous books of hadith, Al-Tahdhib
and Al-Istibsar.
And Al-Istibsar.
Two of the four books, we know the most sources of hadith. Yeah, there are four books called Al-Kutub al-Arba'a, the four books. Like in the Sunnis are Sihah al-Sitta, we have four books with what is very important about the chain of narrators for each one. Which means that Al-Kulayni in his book Al-Kafi, then Sheikh al-Saduq in Man La Yahduru al-Faqih, and Sheikh al-Tussi in both books, Al-Istibsar and Al-Tahdhib. Istibsar 4 volumes, Al-Tahdhib 10 volumes. Every single hadith about the subject, starting from the ablution, wudu, until the inheritance and the last, whatever chapter of jurisprudence, he, the author, mentions his chain of narrators between himself and the last one who connects him to the Imam. And of course leaves that to the mujtahid to verify the authenticity and credibility of the narrator, each narrator. And he himself wrote a book about that called Rijal al-Sheikh al Tussi and Al-Fihrist. In fiqh he wrote Al-Nihaya, Al-Mabsut, which is bigger than Al-Nihaya. Then Al-Khilaf, as I said, it is the comparative study with other. Then in Tafsir, he wrote 10 volumes at Tibyan, fi Tafsir al-Quran. So all these give him some sort of unique way to cover all the subjects needed for ijtihad. So it is not only hadith, it is not only Quran, the hadith, tafsir, rijal, the ilm al-hadith, and all these will help in getting closer to the induction or the conclusion of the ahkam or rulings of Sharia. But of course, his spiritual ability, definitely as a sincere person who did not own anything for himself. Whatever he got, he was to serve his students. And later on, although according to Sharia, when you have a barren land and you erect any building on that, it becomes yours. Because the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Man ahya ardan baytatan fahiya lahu." So he had the right to own it, and like many other people, to leave his family to benefit from the appreciation of value or whatever. No, he wrote in his will that I make this a mosque, masjid, and still it is there. So this is spirituality, this sincerity, this hope in serving the community had a good influence on the community, of course. Those who learned from him, educated and studied under him, of course, they were spread everywhere, and they were scholars in the next generation.
Thank you very much. Speaking of his family, I also read somewhere that the next marja after him was actually his son.
His son, yes. His
So
son
this
Abu Ali,
could-
yes. His son Abu Ali was recognized because he was educated under his father and trained for. So the one many people would consult and seek his advice in religious matters was Abu Ali.
Thank you. Even though this is too early, maybe in those days to maybe discuss, but the Usuli and the Akhbari's conflict or difference of opinions came maybe a bit after. But some say maybe Sheikh al Tussi was more of an Usuli than, or was it started during his? What's the difference, first of all, between these two?
Briefly, the issue of Usul al-Akhbar is, shall we rely heavily on the narrations, on the traditions, on the hadith? So if someone follows that, is Akhbari, all right? Or we have to look at the other sources and use the intellectual reasoning and make our effort to understand what is, the spirit of the law. For example, the Zahiri school, Ibn Hazm, for example, in his Al-Muhalla, believes that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ, don't say to your parents, off, which I fed up, doesn't mean necessarily that don't beat them. And it is ridiculous to say that. It is illogical. So when someone logically concludes that when the lesser harm, lesser disrespect is prohibited, it goes without saying that the greater harm and greater disrespect is. So this type was a bit problematic by some people who are traditionalists, in a sense that they say, because we stick to the word. We don't use any logical or intellectual reasoning behind it. So this was the beginning of the two different methodologies, which that time wasn't that severe or deep, but later on, of course, we see the rift about it.
One thing I wanted to mention, if you can address also, that it took many years for anyone to come and release maybe a fatwa different to that of Sheikh al Tussi.
Yeah. It is said and narrated that between Sheikh al Tussi and Ibn Idris al-Hilli from Hilla, because another center after Baghdad, it was Hilla, that time it was Ibn Idris in his book As-Sarair, approximately 90 years, approximately, or century, it was. No one dared to come clear and public about his difference or dispute or different way of doing ijtihad in comparison to Sheikh Tussi. That high level of respect they had in their mind to Sheikh Tussi, being Sheikh al-Ta'ifa, okay? And maybe they had this story of some sort of endorsement of the Imam alayhi salam in the dream when three scholars moved from Baghdad to Najaf, and they were worried about An-Nihaya, the book which mentioned that the Risala Amaliyya, whether this is jaiz for the first time or not. And the story says that they went near the shrine of Imam Ali alayhi salam. They fasted for 3 days. Then, they wrote they decided to write down whatever they see in the dreams, okay? And they asked Imam Ali alayhi salam in the dream whether it was the correct thing to do that Sheikh Tussi did or not. So each opened his own piece of paper or memoir and noticed that the Imam alayhi salam approved of the work of or endorsed Sheikh Tussi. They went to congratulate or to inform Sheikh Tussi later on, and before they start talking, they said that the same gentleman who came to your dream came to me. And so maybe this atmosphere, this type of background, that someone with a great knowledge and at the same time with some sort of endorsement from the Imam, even in the dream, all right, gives them some sort of more confidence. They didn't dare, it is said, in the history of and biography of our ulama, that for some 90 years until Ibn Idris al-Hilli, they wouldn't issue a different fatwa. And the first one who said, look, he was a mujtahid, we have the same ability, the same tools, and maybe the progress made within the 90 years or 100 years, I mean, permit us to use our own whatever ijtihad.
Thank you very much. Sheikh al Tussi, of course, lived for 12 years in the holy city of Najaf, and he passed away in the holy month of Muharram in the year 460 AH after Hijrah. And of course, as Sayyid Fadl mentioned, he asked to be buried in his own home, which was converted to a mosque until today is used as a masjid, a mosque, of course, and also, as mentioned, classes take place there for the Hawza of Najaf.
It is good to know that Sayyid Bahr Ulum later on bought a house adjacent to the mosque, and he is buried there, and many scholars from the family Bahr Ulum are buried there, and that's why a friend of mine, Sayyid Hussein Bahr Ulum rahmatullah alayh, established a library within the grave of Sayyid Bahr Ulum, called it Maktabatul Alamain al-Tusi wa Bahr Ulum, the library of the two great personalities, Sheikh Tussi and Sayyid Bahr Ulum. So if one goes there, on the right, that is the grave of Sayyid Bahr Ulum. On the left, the big mosque is Sheikh Tussi.
Thank you very much. Of course, we can take many lessons from the life of Sheikh al Tussi. Something that strikes me the most is, even though he was attacked, even though his library was burnt, even though his home was attacked, the Sheikh wasn't there, of course. Even though the pulpit, the chair of Kalam, where he would give his sermons, was burnt, and even though he was under so much threat, and all his books were burnt, this did not stop or deter Sheikh al Tussi from continuing to spread the knowledge of the Ahlulbayt, the knowledge of the Quran, the knowledge of the Holy Prophet, and strived. And I think this is one of the most important lessons we can learn from the life of Sheikh al Tussi. Join me next week, inshallah, for another episode where we look at a pioneer, a scholar who inspires us till today. Thank you, Sayyid Fadl. Thank you for watching. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ahlulbayt TV, the holy household for every household.